Okay, so I wanted to do a little presentation using Google Earth here to show the route to Kanchenjunga as well as the route that we'll be taking up the climb to the summit of Kanchenjunga. There's not a lot of information about this, and I haven't found anything else that clearly shows using Google Earth like this the route to get up the southwest face of Kanchenjunga. So here it is. This is the 2020 Southwest Face Kanchenjunga expedition. And just like any other trip to Nepal, we'll be starting in Kathmandu here. This is a sprawling city in the Kathmandu Valley. We'll spend a couple of days here sorting out equipment and planning. I'll have some paperwork to do just while all of the team arrives. Then we'll jump in a plane and fly over to Badrapur Airport, which is here in the southeast corner of Nepal on the border with India. It's a tiny little airport. And then, as you can see from there, we have a pretty long way to go to get to the Kanchenjunga area, pretty much the whole length of the whole height of Nepal, because Kanchenjunga is in the northeast corner. It takes a full day of driving to get from Badrapur to Taplejung, which is near where our hike will start. So we'll spend a whole day driving along these windy mountain roads to get to Taplejung, and then all being well, we can drive further up the valley here to get to Tapithok. Now in 2017, this is where the road ended. We hiked up to here, and then we actually ended up hiking a couple of days further to get to Taplejung, but hopefully we can drive as far as Tapithok and then start our approach trek, which will still take a couple of weeks to get to base camp. The first day we'll hike to Sekathum here. This is all low down in the valley, around 1,000 meters. And from Sekathum onwards, this is where we really start to gain altitude. Up the valley here to Gyabla. Now this is the village where Namgir is from. His house is actually a little further down the valley. We'll hike right past it, just like we did in 2017. So we'll get to see where Namgir was from. Namgir's uncle owns a hotel here in Gyabla. In 2017 they were actually just finishing off the hotel, and they had a big party at the end of the season, which we were lucky enough to go to, and we got really drunk, which was great fun. And then from Gyabla we continue all the way up the valley to Phale here, which is a Tibetan village. A rather large village, lots of farming here. And then on to Gunsa. So we'll spend a couple of nights here, we'll have some rest because we've climbed a lot of elevation to get to this point, and the days will be pretty long. So we'll spend a couple of days there. This is the last permanent village before we get to some of the more temporary or seasonal villages further up the valley. It's also probably the most developed village. There's lots of tea houses and some little shops and that kind of thing. So it's a comfortable place to spend a few days. We then hike up further to Kambachan up here, and you can see now we're really in the bigger mountains. We have glaciers on all sides, and some pretty big glaciers flowing down here. This is now the Kanchenjunga River that we're hiking along. And Kambachan is a seasonal village that's only really open in the spring and fall through the trekking season. From Kambachan we then hike further into the Alpine up to Lonak, so we're now well above the tree line. There's no vegetation around at all. And Lonak is right near Tibet, so the border with Tibet is these mountains here, so you're very close to Tibet at this point, and you're now on the moraine of the Kanchenjunga Glacier here. As you can see, you get some pretty incredible views of the north face of Yalongkang here. This is part of the Kanchenjunga Massif. From Lonak we then hike up to Pang Pema. This is Kanchenjunga North Base Camp, so if you're climbing Kanchenjunga from the north, you'd camp here. We're not badass enough to be doing that. The north side is very hard and very dangerous. So this is the Kanchenjunga Glacier here on the north side of Kanchenjunga, and as you can see, it's a pretty huge mountain, and that north face is rather terrifying. So we'll do a day hike up to Pang Pema and then hike back to Lonak here. And then from Lonak all the way back down to Gunsa. It's a really long day, but we lose a lot of elevation, so we should be feeling pretty good by the time we get down to Gunsa. And we'll spend another couple of days just recovering here. Then that's the first section of the trek. That's the north side. We're doing the whole Kanchenjunga Circuit, so that we then go over Salele Pass here, over a 5,000 meter pass to get back to the south side, which is Chiram here. We'll be going up and down to 5,000 meters a couple of times, and the idea there is that we should hopefully, by the time we get to base camp, be acclimatized to above 5,000 meters. Base camp is 5,500, so we want to go up to at least 5,000 a couple of times so that we're nicely acclimatized for that. So from Gunsa, we'll spend a day hiking up to Salele. It's a pretty long way up, and Salele is just a tiny little, it's not even a village, it's just one tea house pretty much up here. Then from Salele you go up and over a high pass and down to Chiram here, which is probably the last permanent village on the south side. You're back into the vegetation again, which is nice. Then this was kind of my favorite section of the trek up to Ramje here. So we're now on the moraine of the Yalung Glacier, which we'll get very familiar with. And there's a broad valley with some really cool peaks, and this is now the border with India right here, so you're looking straight through to India there. And then we'll hike up to Oktang. It's the last place you can get to before you drop down onto the actual glacier flow here of the Yalung Glacier, and this is where we'll say goodbye to the trekkers. They won't join us down onto the glacier because it takes 3 days just to get from here over to base camp, just up here. The distance isn't very long, I'd probably say in the range of like 15 kilometers, but hiking across here is just a labyrinth of rubble and ice and crevasses, and it's extremely slow going. We can't take yaks with us either, so we'll have only manpower getting to the base camp here. Now in 2017 we got to somewhere around here. We got to see the route up Kanchenjunga, but we didn't actually make it to base camp, and that took 2 days just to get this far. So then we'll continue all the way along. Like I said, all manpower. We'll have about 50 porters with us, plus base camp staff, climbing Sherpas, and the climbers themselves, probably totaling around 70 to 80 people in our team. And then, I'm in the wrong place there. Here it is. Here's base camp. So as you can see, we've gone a pretty long way along the glacier here. And it's probably going to be the worst part of the whole thing, is just getting to base camp there. Base camp's a pretty safe place. If you look around, you have these huge walls all around you, which obviously avalanche. But base camp is a high point on rock, not on ice. So yeah, pretty protected from any other hazards around it. That being said, it's probably going to be extremely cold and not a very habitable place to be for a long time. So we'll spend a couple of days there just acclimatizing, sorting out equipment and preparing for the climb ahead. The climb from base camp to Camp 1 is mostly non-technical. There's a couple of steep sections here of snow and ice getting up the side of this ice fall here to gain this ridge. And then once we're on that ridge, Camp 1 is just a little bit further up the ridge there. Also in a relatively safe spot from avalanches around it. You know, we're on rock again, so we don't have to worry about crevasses and that kind of thing. So pretty good spot to be. And then we'll go all the way back down to base camp again. So that's just an acclimatization climb up to Camp 1 to move equipment up the mountain. Then we'll go back down and rest. Then we'll go back up again, drop down onto this glacier here, and up to Camp 2. Now you can see we're starting to get into more crevasse hazard. Also, we're getting relatively close to these big walls around. They're pretty huge, pretty steep. and Camp 2 is tucked away down in there, so we're going to find some safe high ground somewhere in there. Then all the way back down to base camp again to rest, get more equipment, more food, supplies, move all the way back up the mountain again. And then we move through the icefall up to Camp 3. This is going to be a pretty convoluted route, probably with the use of fixed ropes and ladders to get through a lot of these crevasses and seracs. Up to Camp 3 here. And then you guessed it, all the way back down again to base camp. Resupply, rest, all the way back up again. One thing I should note while this is all happening is that we will be climbing in the bad weather. You can't avoid it. If you don't climb in bad weather, you don't make it up the mountain. So, you know, it's not going to be nice and sunny like this picture is showing the whole month while we're actually climbing the mountain. So we'll be climbing in some storms. There'll be a lot of trail breaking. You know, these distances look very short, but bear in mind by the time we get to Camp 3, we're now above 7,000 meters. We'll be breaking trail a lot of the time. There'll be a lot of fresh snow around, the crevasses and icefall and everything changes the whole time. So it's extremely slow going and pretty painful climbing as well in terms of what you have to deal with. Once we get to Camp 3, we'll probably be sleeping with oxygen because we're now well above 7,000 meters. And then the climbs from Camp 3 to Camp 4 probably won't use oxygen, but definitely Camp 4 will sleep with oxygen because otherwise you don't sleep well enough, you don't get enough oxygen while you're sleeping, and you need to sleep to rest. So the climb from Camp 3 to Camp 4 is fairly short, fairly straightforward, but you know, as you can see here, we are gaining altitude pretty steadily up here, and Camp 4 is really the last place you could pitch any kind of tent, because from then onwards you're into the hardest and the most technical and steepest climbing of the whole thing, which is mostly above 8,000 meters. So once we get to Camp 4, we'll probably spend a night there, and then we might end up going all the way back down the mountain, or if we have a good weather window and we're feeling strong enough, we might then push for the summit from Camp 4. So the actual climb up from Camp 4 to the summit we'll wake up probably at midnight or just before, maybe 10, 11 p.m. the night before, and start our climb up this very steep couloir here. Probably steeper than most of the stuff that we've already climbed. We're now well above 8,000 meters all the way up there, so we'll have oxygen on, and then from about 8,400 meters to the summit, which is the last kind of 200 meters of the climb, this is the hardest and the most technical climbing. It's all mixed snow, rock, and ice climbing. They say it goes up to about 5'8", which at sea level isn't particularly difficult, but at altitude, when you have, you know, all of the high altitude gear, oxygen, big heavy boots and packs, and all the rest of it, you know, you're now talking about extremely difficult climbing to get up to the summit. And from here, as you can see, looking down to the east into India, you have ridiculously steep walls down there. The north face isn't any better, really. And even looking south up what we've just come up, it's also looking pretty steep. So not really any way you could go from up there. And once you get there, you're still not done. You still need to get back down. So we have to reverse exactly the same route, and from summit we'll probably go all the way down to Camp 3, maybe to Camp 2 if we're feeling strong enough. All in the same day. So you go from Camp 4 to the summit, and then you get down as fast as you can to get out of the death zone and back into oxygen. And then from there we end up going back down to base camp most likely. And then we'll spend a few days just kind of clearing the mountain, you know, getting all the garbage, because we have to pack out all the garbage. You know, if there may be a couple of summit attempts as well, so spend a few days just kind of sorting stuff out. And then you would think that would be it, but we then still have to get all the way back across the glacier, another 2 or 3 days to get all the way back to Ramja. Then from Ramja all the way down the valley to Torrentang here. Now we're back into vegetation and warmer weather, hopefully, and oxygen, which is always nice. Then a really long day over to Yamfudin. Now we're getting fairly low elevations again. And then through all the foothills here to Kebang. And then the last day from Kebang over to Hupakola here, which is where the road goes to. So in 2017 when we did this, we did it in the reverse, and we actually drove to Hupakola and then did the whole trek I just showed in reverse. So hopefully we'll get jeeps here and we'll get to drive back to Badrapur and then fly back to Kathmandu. So that kind of shows the whole circuit trek and climb there. But this whole trip will take about 2 months. We have 3 weeks to get from Kathmandu to the mountain, 1 month of climbing on the mountain, and then about a week to get from the mountain back to Kathmandu again. So 2 months overall through April and May. Like I said, it's all manpower. We can't take yaks with us to the base camp. I very much doubt we're going to be helicoptering any equipment in as well. So that's why this thing has taken 2 years so far to plan, because it's just a logistical nightmare to actually sort this expedition out. It's been difficult to find climbers who actually want to go to Kanchenjunga, because no one seems to really want to climb it. So yeah, it's been very difficult so far. We haven't even got to the mountain or to the climb yet, but I'm really excited, and I'm glad that I've actually been able to share something like this with you. I've realized this has gone on for about 17 minutes so far, so I'll end it here, and yeah, I hope this has been helpful.